Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Entertainment Dome. I am one of your hosts, Mr. James Hall, and alongside me is...
Michael Beckwith. Hello to you all.
Hello, yes, this is going to be a different episode today. A little different to last week's.
How so, James? Do tell.
Well, it's not going to be angry time with us two.
Well, at least not the whole time.
No. It's going to be a little bit happier today because we're talking about Legend of Korra. Yes, that's essentially what Legend of Korra is at the moment. It's like, hey! Oh, God.
That pretty much does, sum it up. Yes, this episode is going to be completely devoted to the Legend of Korra. For those of you who don't know, the Legend of Korra is an animated television show aired on Nickelodeon, I believe.
Yes.
And it is a sequel series to the incredibly popular Avatar: The Last Airbender series.
Which, if you haven't seen, what the hell are you doing? Go and watch that series, it's brilliant.
Go watch it now. In fact, we must probably state this out quite early on. We may have spoilers for Last Airbender, and there will definitely be spoilers for Korra, at least concerning books 1 and 2. Because today, or I suppose technically yesterday, last night, book 3 of Legend of Korra started with 3 episodes. Probably because I think maybe 5 episodes were leaked a few weeks ago.
Oh yeah, I read about that. Oh dear.
So now they've opened up with 3 episodes to sort of compensate for that. But whatever, no problem.
It's good for us.
Book 3's now started. We'll talk about book 3 later. I suppose we should start off by saying how we got into the series to begin with, which means talking about how we came to find out about Last Airbender. Because I'm assuming, James, you saw Last Airbender before you watched Korra, right?
Oh, yes. Although, admittedly, I actually heard about Legend of Korra first, and then looked into Last Airbender. Admittedly, also because of a certain critic.
Ah. Is that what got you into the series, then?
When I heard Nostalgia Critic talk about the movie, and oh my god, that movie! Please don't watch the movie. Don't watch that.
We're not going to talk about the movie in this podcast.
The movie doesn't exist.
What movie? I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. It doesn't go there. It doesn't even come here. She doesn't even go here. That's essentially what we feel about the movie. But I heard about that and I was like, alright, I'll look into the series because it looks entertaining, and he was actually right. It's very funny, it's very fast-paced. The Tales of Ba Sing Se was one of the best episodes in the entire bloody series. Just that episode with Mako. My God! My God! That was like, this is meant to be this is meant to be a happy kids show. Oh God, that was a perfectly well done episode.
Really, I could say that about the entire series. I knew about Last Airbender for years. I'd seen it before. I'd commonly brought up, but I never had the inclination to watch it. Then, book 1 of Korra finished, and I listened to a sort of podcast on a sort of retrospective on that series. And it kind of made me interested in Last Airbender. So this was about probably last year, I think, or the year before. Yeah, no, it was the year before. So 2012. I found all the episodes of Last Airbender. I marathoned them because I just could not stop watching it.
That's what you always do.
Yeah, I suppose I can sort of just agree with James on this one. Last Airbender was an amazing show. Especially for a kids show, because it didn't talk down to kids. It was very blunt with it. It was the great sort of middle ground where kids could watch it and enjoy it, but an adult could watch it and have just as much enjoyment with it for completely different reasons. It had great animation, great writing, great characters.
It knew when to be serious as well. It knew when to be serious and when to be funny.
It had this fantastic middle ground. It was never too silly and it was never too dark. It had a perfect middle ground. And we could probably devote the entire episode to how great Last Airbender was.
Oh,
but
yes.
We want to completely focus on Legend of Korra. Because
do we have to?
Yes, we do.
Oh.
Because the way it sort of works is that Last Airbender had 3 seasons. That's another great thing about this show. It had a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yeah.
They didn't drag out unnecessarily. They knew where they wanted to end, and then they got there.
Well, there is still going on with the comic books, but...
Yeah, but the comic books sort of happen, like, they're sort of like... There are, like, some comic book stories that take place after the events of the show, but to be perfectly honest, that you don't need to read them to fully enjoy Korra.
They're basically the Buffy Series 8 of the Legend of the Avatar world.
Yeah, footnotes. And from what I've heard, the comic books aren't all that great anyway.
No.
But Last Airbender ran for 3 seasons, or books as they were called. Book 1 was water, Book 2 was earth, Book 3 was fire. I suppose we should probably clarify, because there are some people who are probably sitting at home like, what the hell are they talking about? Last Airbender was set in a world that was very much in the middle of war. It was divided. They were like, the entire world was pretty much been taken over by the Fire Nation, who specialise in fire bending. Bending is not so much a magic in a sense, but benders are capable of manipulating one of the 4 elements. The 4 elements being water, earth, fire, and air. And the Avatar is somebody who has mastery over all 4 elements. The Avatar in question this time around, because the Avatar gets reincarnated every time an Avatar dies, a new Avatar is born. The Avatar in this question is a 12-year-old airbender named Aang, who ran away from home because he couldn't deal with the pressure of becoming the Avatar, got frozen in an iceberg for 100 years.
As you do.
And upon being awakened, has now been tasked to learn the other 3 elements so he can defeat Fire Lord Ozai and restore balance to the world.
Who is played by Mark Hamill, just to let you guys know.
Mark Hamill was the villain, and it was glorious.
It was the Joker voice.
Not completely.
Less maniacal, just more...
Yeah. But, without spending too much time talking about it, that was the general gist of the show. And every book, I'm going to be calling them books,
that's what they are.
Was about roughly 21 episodes, I'd say.
Round about that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a sort of average length for like an American show. Legend of Korra, on the other hand, is very much dealt with like a mini-series. The first book was only 13 episodes, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, it was. I think it's because they were testing the waters to see if people would go for it.
Which is kind of weird, considering how it was following up to one of the most popular cartoons ever made.
I think it's because Nickelodeon are very scared when it comes to making new stuff. They're not very confident. When they really should be.
Especially, again... I'm going to keep reiterating this. It was a sequel to one of the most popular children's cartoons in the last 10 years or so.
Exactly.
How could they not think there would be no interest in it? But whatever the reason, it happened. Legend of Korra came out with only 13 episodes, which is quite possibly one of the biggest things that was wrong with the show. And it carried on into book 2 as well.
Oh, there's other problems. There's many other problems.
In case it wasn't clear, Legend of Korra has its fans. And if you've watched Legend of Korra and absolutely adore it, that's fine. You know, we don't have a problem with you loving the show.
It's a decent enough series, but there's a lot more flaws in Legend of Korra than there is in Last Airbender. A lot more.
That's not to say Last Airbender didn't have problems, because nothing is perfect.
Oh, no, it had many.
Last Airbender did have a few problems. There's even one episode of the entire series that a lot of people really don't like.
I wonder what that one is.
But, see, fans will get that, non-fans won't. But Last Airbender also did so much right, and Legend of Korra somehow did not live up to that. And I don't want to use that phrase entirely, because that would sound like as if we're saying, oh, Legend of Korra isn't Last Airbender, therefore it must be bad, when that's not the case. Legend of Korra's problem isn't that it's not being Last Airbender, because we wanted to be its own thing. It's just that everything it did, Last Airbender did so much better.
I think another big problem is, I think Season 1 of Legend of Korra was a lot better than Season 2.
Oh, agreed. That's not to say Season 1 was all that great.
But Season 1 had stronger things than that.
Season 1 started off quite strong, in my opinion, but then, like, around the halfway point, it began to really dip down. It was sort of like, oh, this is actually getting quite bad. So, I suppose let's sum up what we thought of Book 1, which very much introduced us to the new Avatar Korra. In fact, James, what's your opinion on Korra as a character?
Ooh, tough one.
Just in terms of books 1 and 2.
In terms of books 1 and 2, I think she's a decent enough female protagonist. I think she is very good, and I think she's cocky. She's a lot more cockier than Aang, which was good. We needed something a little bit more different to him, but I think some of the relationships she has with some of the characters are a little bit frustrating. I think you know who
I know what you mean.
Talking about.
We'll probably devote like a whole section of this episode just to that. But no, I do agree with you. The great thing about Korra started off quite likable in my opinion, because I kind of like the kind of cocky female characters.
Yeah,
and Korra what was great about, she was almost the polar opposite of Aang, which is what we needed. We didn't want an Aang 2.0. No. We got somebody who Aang kind of like didn't. Aang admitted early on in Last Airbender that he never wanted to be the Avatar, and that having all this responsibility thrust upon him is like very sort of
too much.
Yeah, it's too much for him, especially considering that he's 12. You know, a 12-year-old kid being tasked with the responsibility of saving an entire world from the tyranny of the Fire Nation. Korra, on the other hand, relishes the fact that she's the Avatar. She absolutely loves it. She had already mastered 3 of the elements by the time she was a little kid.
I think that was a little bit of a problem, though. Aang, you could definitely see, had to build up his powers. Like, he learned waterbending quickly. It's because waterbending is, like, really similar to airbending. But it took him a long time to learn earthbending and firebending. Yeah. While Korra was like, I can do all this straight away. It's like,
To be fair, though, she did struggle massively with airbending, which made sense true. Because airbending was completely against her character. Of course, that then led to another problem later on in Book 1, which I'll get to when I get to it. if I do, we probably won't be able to get to cover everything. But yeah, Korra started out as being like a likable protagonist in my eyes. She never went downhill in Book 1, although she had a few problems. Then Book 2 happened, and oh my god.
Oh,
I suppose we should probably save that until we get to Book 2. Let's focus on Book 1 for now.
Yeah.
But Book 1 saw... And one thing I'll give Book 1 credit is how it very much looks like an evolved version of Last Airbender's world.
Yes.
Because Last Airbender was very sort of rural and ancient and mystical, whereas Legend of Korra is a bit more steampunky as it's going in the middle of a massive technological phase.
That I really love. That was a good step in the right direction.
So now we're seeing like cars and blimps and radio. It's all with sort of
airships.
Very sort of, yeah, stuff like that. So I'll give it credit for its world. So when Korra arrives in Republic City, which is very much where the majority of the action of Book 1 takes place, it was very much I liked the new location, and of course we were then introduced to a whole new plethora of brand new characters, which is a great thing because. Since Legend of Korra takes place a good number of years after Last Airbender, a lot of the characters from the previous show are kind of dead.
Yeah, there's only Katara who's alive, and she's an old woman, and
Katara,
Zuko.
who we do see. Yeah, Katara we see in Book 1 and a bit of Book 2. For those of you not in the know, Katara was one of the main characters in Last Airbender. She was one of Aang's travelling companions, and eventually became not only his waterbending teacher, but later on his love interest.
I hope she comes back for Book 3. I really hope she does.
The way it's going so far, I don't think she will, but it'd be cool to see her like kicking ass.
I was about to say, just they think, oh, she's an old woman, she won't do anything, and just completely annihilate everything.
Katara was deadly.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, most of the original cast of Last Airbender have passed away because of old age and stuff. So we've got a brand new set of characters, which is obviously a good thing. But the problem is that a lot of them are not all that memorable / likeable. let's start off with Aang's son Tenzin,
Yes.
who we see quite early on. Tenzin is easily my favourite character in the whole show thus far.
It's because his family is the most memorable characters in the show.
Yeah, Tenzin is Aang and Katara's son. Spoilers: Aang and Katara get together at the end of Last Airbender. But yeah,
Spoilers.
But because this is a very long time, this isn't like we see now we see Aang's son as a fully grown man with a family. He has 3 kids at the beginning of book 1 and then gets a 4th by the end of it. And he's very likable because he's sort of like very ragged and sort of like tired because he's having to deal with a bunch of very hyperactive 6 and 7-year-olds.
And his uncle. And not his uncle, the uncle.
Yeah, and his older brother, who we see later in book 2. And then he becomes Korra's tutor in airbending, which becomes a massive struggle because it all requires sort of a calm mind and sort of tranquility and meditation and all that stuff, which Korra's not that good at.
Nope.
She's very much... Korra likes to settle things with fists rather than words, which really bites her in the arse on a number of occasions.
I think a number of occasions is a little bit of an understatement, right?
Yeah.
Just a
but no,
tip.
Tenzin was a very likable character. He was very also because even though he provides a lot of the show's humor, in my opinion, but he's also got, because in Last Airbender, it's just, before the series begins, the Airbenders have been wiped out. There's a reason the show's called The Last Airbender, because Aang is the only one left. So now Tenzin has been left to try and like bring in a whole new generation of Airbenders, and that's a massive responsibility in his eyes, which becomes more apparent in book 2, which gives him some great development,
and even more in book 3.
Oh yeah, definitely. But again, we'll get there when we get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's Tenzin. Korra's 2 other friends who she meets when she gets to Republic City are brothers Marco and Bolin. Bolin is an Earthbender. He's very much written as the show's comic relief. I always refer to him as Sokka 2.0.
I was about to say he is Sokka.
Yes, Sokka in the original Last Airbender was Katara's older brother. He was very much the comic relief for the entirety of the show. But the difference between Sokka and Bolin is that Sokka was not defined for being the comic relief. Even though he had a lot of silly moments, he was also very smart, very creative, good with a sword.
He was a very good warrior.
He was quite capable. Not to begin with, but he got quite capable of holding his own in battle. And he was even responsible for strategizing an attack on the Fire Nation during like their weakest moments. Sokka was not stupid, and he had a lot of great moments that really showed how courageous he was, despite all the other moments where he tends to freak out a bit. Bolin has none of that. He's pure comedy, which is such a shame because I want to like him more than I currently do.
Oh, I like him.
There's not to say I do like Bolin, but it's more of like I like him because
he needs more build-up. He needs more than just the comedy.
Yeah, I was hoping book 2 would add a bit more to that, but ultimately it didn't. But we'll get to book 2 when we get to book 2. We're focusing on. I keep reiterating this just for myself.
We need to focus.
Yeah, I'm doing this purely for myself, listeners, just because I don't want to drift off into like completely unrelated territory,
like we usually do.
Yeah. Then we have Bolin's brother Marco. We'll get into him a lot more in book 2. Trust me.
God.
Marco, I think I heard somebody describe Marco as Zuko without the angst, which I think
I describe him as Zuko without any of the likability. But go on.
Yeah. Again, I suppose we must sort of say, people are probably wondering, who's Zuko? Zuko was the original antagonist of Last Airbender. But the thing is, though, even though he was set up to be the baddie, in book 1, he was quickly overshadowed by a much more threatening villain who was like a high-ranking commander in the Fire Nation's army.
Who came back in the series 2, which was hilarious.
Yeah, who then had a cameo in book 2 of Korra.
Played by Jason Isaacs again. Yes, it was played by Jason Isaacs of Lucius Malfoy from the Harry Potter movies.
Zhao, the Moonslayer.
That was hilarious. Well, not slaying the moon, but yeah.
Zuko was very much played up as a very sympathetic antagonist, and it became more and more apparent that this was clearly not somebody who was evil or out for power or revenge. This was somebody who just wanted to come home because his dad had basically banished him for disagreeing with him, and then Zuko got scarred. He had a massive scar on one eye because his father burnt him. And of course, by the end of it, Zuko eventually turned. He joined the Avatar, and together they were able to usher in a new reign of peace. Mako is a firebender, just like Zuko, and that's it.
that's not far off either.
He becomes a cop in Book 2, and also, probably the biggest thing is the fact that in Book 1, he is very much Korra's love interest.
And a dick.
However, the problem with this is that there's no issue with him being a love interest. The problem is that in Last Airbender, the Aang and Katara relationship, it was always there, but it was there in the background. It only ever came to the forefront when the episode depended on it. It never got in the way, and plus, it felt natural, because we saw Aang's attraction to Katara grow gradually as they travelled together. They travelled together to fight in a war.
It didn't happen straight away.
Whereas in Legend of Korra, Korra meets Mako. Mako doesn't realise she's the Avatar and sort of acts a bit shitty towards her. And then he finds out and he's like, oh, sorry. Next episode, Korra fancies him. For no explained reason.
Basically, guys, this is essentially what happens in Beyond Two Souls, when Ellen Page's character falls in love with Ryan for no goddamn reason.
I don't know if it's that bad, but yeah, Korra immediately develops a crush on Mako for no explained reason. And of course it's then apparent that Bolin has a massive thing for Korra, so it's like, oh look, it's a love triangle, I don't care, go away. Take your shitty writing away and drop it in a pit somewhere.
She should have gone for Bolin, because at least Bolin's likeable.
Well, that's the thing. In an episode of Book 1, Korra and Bolin do go out, but
yeah,
really,
but not for long.
And it's mostly for Korra to spite Mako, which is like, wow, dick move, Korra.
Yeah, that's the problem.
But yeah, that's basically Mako. In Book 1, he's incredibly boring. There's one thing about Mako, because then midway through the series, Mako gets together with a woman called Asami, who is the daughter of the man who runs Future Industries, which is like basically this big company that makes things.
Great summarization there, Michael.
They make things. Yeah,
they make shit. There we go.
Yeah, pretty much she's the daughter of a man who's in charge of running this huge corporation. Like, Asami is very likeable, very attractive, so...
Easily the best character.
Probably the best character, aside from Tenzin. So, Mako gets together with her, and so Korra now is like... To be fair, Korra never acts all bitter towards Asami, never treats her badly as a person.
No, they get on very well.
They do. But then, of course, Marco's now with Asami. He has no interest in Korra romantically. And then towards the end of the season, Mako does a complete 180 for no explained reason. He's suddenly concerned about Korra all the time. He's constantly going towards her when she's hurt, and the show ends with him not even dumping Asami, just goes to Korra, and it's
douche.
It's such a random moment, and I'd be fine with it if it made sense or we had any signs that they were going to get together. And this is probably one of the reasons why the 13 episode length really hampers it, because it means not just the romance subplot, but the general story in general, which just reminds me, we didn't actually talk about the overall story up to book 1.
Especially as one of my favourite characters is the villain.
Yes, the book season 1 of Korra, first it begins with Korra going to a public city to meet Tenzin and learn airbending. However, things begin to take a bit of a dark turn, because then a man by the name of Amon appears with a group known as the Equalists, who are a group of non-benders who want to basically free the world from the tyranny of benders, because they view benders as like being like the dominant superpower, I guess, and because obviously benders are capable of manipulating some benders are capable of manipulating the very earth we stand on. They are very powerful people. And so this, of course, brings up almost a bit of a conflict between benders and non-benders, which is quite interesting. I'll give it credit. It's a very interesting conflict. It's not handled by the Council of Republic City very well, who was sort of like, oh, we must oppose every non-bender, and prove our enemy right. It's very stupid, but yeah, what James was saying is Amon was a great villain, whereas Ozai, the villain of the previous series, and to a degree Ozai's daughter Azula, were very much quite loud and powerful and striking villains. Amon was more discreet. He hung back in the shadows, and as a result became a lot more intimidating. In one episode, he is so close to just killing Korra, and the only reason he lets her live is because her death would basically make her a martyr in the people's eyes and not help his cause whatsoever. And it's a moment where you're like, holy shit, this guy means business.
I would still say Ozai is still a more threatening villain, but on a different scale. Ozai is more outward and more powerful and just like overbearing in a way, while Amon is, as you said, more in the shadows, more careful, but also just bloody frightening at times. Also, he's played by Steve Bloom. For Cowboy Bebop fans, that is the man that played Spike Spiegel.
Also Wolverine.
Also Killer Croc. Basically, a lot of
everyone.
Yeah. Steve Bloom's everywhere.
Every voice actor voices everyone. But yeah, another thing that made Amon so creepy is the fact that it's established that he has the power to remove a person's bending. And at the time, the only person we'd ever seen be able to do that was Aang.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that this guy is capable of taking away anyone's bending was quite scary, and it made him all the more mysterious and threatening.
Who is this guy?
Then his backstory got explained, and then he got beaten, and it was like, wow, this was quite underwhelming.
Oh my god, the ending. Tell me about the rabbits, Tarlok. Boom!
Yes, Amon dies because his brother blows them up in a boat. To be fair, in my opinion, that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part is
that was a decent enough ending for him.
The conflict, basically, most of the conflict of like the final episode was that Korra and Amon are fighting. Amon manages to take away all of Korra's bending, thus making her powerless. She can't do anything. He then goes for Mako. Korra goes, no! And suddenly she can airbend. And it's like,
through the power of Deus Ex Machina.
I'm sitting at home going, fucking what? Because she should not have been able to do that, but whatever. She suddenly can airbend and literally pushes Amon out of a window. And that's it. And then, of course, it then turns out that, because Amon has been outed as a waterbender, it turns out that his way of stealing people's bending was a form of blood bending. Yeah, by the way, there are people in this world who can bend your blood. If that's not scary, I don't know what is.
Basically, they can control your movement, everything. There's a whole episode in Legend of The Last Avatar dedicated to blood bending, and it's Last Airbender. Yeah. What the hell did I say?
You said Legend. I think in Europe, the first series was called Legend of Aang, and everywhere else it was called Last Airbender.
I think it's because in the UK, Bender has a different meaning.
Yeah.
And you've been saying Bender a lot this episode, Michael.
Don't be childish.
But it's the fun way, Michael.
But anyway, Amon is actually a waterbender, and of course he gets pushed out of a window, lands in the water, uses his waterbending to come out, and what a shock, all his supporters are there to see him do this. And it's like, he's a bender himself, he's a hypocrite. Also, Amon spends the entire season wearing a mask, and he takes the mask comes off, and there's nothing wrong with his face.
No.
And it's like, for God's sake. And then of course, then book one has the audacity to end with Korra moping because she's lost all her bending aside from airbending, and Marco's like, oh, but I love you anyway, and Korra's like, no, and she runs away, and it's like slightly hinted that she's tempted to commit suicide, and then for some bizarre reason Aang appears,
as you do,
and says, oh, by the way, here's all your bending back. And it's like, what?
I died for your sins. Yeah, by the way, Aang dies really early on in this well, not dies early on, but like dies off screen really early on. Like he was only in his 50s, 60s.
I think he was in his late 40s when he died.
It's said that because he trapped himself in the ice for so long, it basically lowered his lifespan a ton. So it sadly killed him when he was very young.
Yeah,
depressing.
Quite depressing, but. Yeah, so Aang sort of appears as like in spirit form to give Korra her bending back, which is basically a way of saying, you've done nothing to earn this power, but I'm going to give it to you anyway.
Deus Ex Machina.
Which really should have been a sign for things to come. Because because like I said before, whereas Book 1 started off quite favourably and then sort of took a bit of a dip down. By the way, I'm moving on because we could probably spend ages talking about every little intricacy about Books 1 and 2, but we'd be here forever.
Yeah. And we've got more to talk about.
But whereas Book 1 started off quite favourably and then sort of dropped in quality as it went along, Book 2 started at shit. It started at shit, stayed at shit for until the middle, where it shot up to unimaginable highs, and then came back down again. Because
oh god,
Book 2's plot revolves around spirits. These spirits are now coming into the human world and pretty much messing shit up. And Korra needs to find a way to stop it all. At least that's how it starts off as. The plot begins to go back and forth between the civil war, between the water tribes, and all this stuff going on in Republic City. And it gets all horribly confusing. But the reason it starts off at shit is because Korra goes from being a somewhat tolerable character to just an utter bitch. In Book 2, she is just such a cow.
I don't know what you mean, Michael. Do go on.
Oh, okay, let's start off with the fact... Okay, number one. She has Marco as her boyfriend now. She's been longing for him throughout the entirety of Book 1. And then when she goes to him for advice, and he sort of admits that he doesn't really know what he can do to make things better, that's a hissy fit at him. And then later on, like, when she says, like, the first argument starts off with, like, I did this, and Marco says, I kind of disagree, and then she storms off. Later on, she asks Marco, did I do the right thing? And Marco decides to agree with her this time, and she gets pissy at him for that. And I'm not defending Marco or anything, because, trust me, I'll get into him in a bit. But Korra just becomes so unlikable. And then there's the fact that she then, like, turns her back on both Tenzin and her father, despite everything they've done for her, to go off with her obviously evil uncle, who does not hide that he's the villain is her uncle, and he does not. And the fact, as soon as he appeared in the first scene, he didn't even need to say a word. I looked at him and went, "He's going to be the baddie, isn't he?" And so, Korra basically just becomes a massive bitch to everyone she knows.
She basically becomes a bratty child. Like,
she does,
really so.
And in the first episode of Book 2, she keeps on saying, "Oh, everyone seems to forget that I beat him on. Korra, you beat him through circumstance. If you did not airbend, you will not be here right now.
You beat him by the power of Deus Ex Machina. That is it."
She has no right to act like she beat him on equal ground, because she didn't. She did not earn that victory. He
was
lucky. Beating
her to the ground.
The only reason she won is because the writers realised, shit, our protagonist is losing. So Korra spends a good chunk of the opening season just being completely unlikable. But the basic plot is that overall what happens is that the spirits are attacking. Korra needs to find a way to stop them. Midway through the season, she suffers amnesia, and when I saw that cliffhanger, I was ready to punch my laptop screen in. Because amnesia is one of the laziest things you can ever do as a writer. It's
one of those you need to do really, really well to make it work. It's very hard.
Fortunately, the amnesia subplot did not last more than 2 episodes, because as soon as she suffered amnesia, she got taken away and found herself living out her memories as the first Avatar, which is where the show got really good. There were 2 episodes which detailed the origins of the Avatar itself. We saw the first Avatar. We saw what the world was like millennia ago. And it was so fascinating and interesting just seeing it all. Not to mention the first Avatar himself. First Avatar 1. The sad thing is, though, I didn't get that until my second viewing. I I was watching with friends and I was like, oh my god, I just realised why they called him One. But yeah, One, in 2 episodes, he not only proved to be a far more likeable Avatar than Korra, but a better Avatar at that, and with more development. In 2 episodes! Korra's had 1.5 seasons at this point. But without going into too much detail, those 2 episodes were amazing, genuinely considered to be the best of that season. The show resumed with Korra, and it all just sort of kind of went downhill again, because then just bullshit happened. I can't even talk about it.
And then the major villain turns into, what was it, the Dark Avatar?
Yeah, that was the thing. The villain's main plan was because he wanted to merge himself with the embodiment of all evil and chaos and become a Dark Avatar, which just sounds like an 8-year-old came up with it.
It sounds like something in a really bad RPG. You are facing the Dark Avatar.
To be fair, a Dark Avatar as a concept, I do find quite interesting.
As a concept, yes.
But the way I imagined it, in my head, the Dark Avatar, quote unquote, would be an avatar that's already come before us, before the current one, who abused their powers. Because all the avatars up until this point, as far as we know, have been benevolent, kind people who have kept the world in balance.
There must have been an evil avatar. There must have been.
But we're never going to see if that was ever a possibility, because in Book 2, Korra's connections with the past avatars were destroyed by the villain, thus making her the first avatar. And it's like, ugh!
Oh, why?
And then the villain sort of turns into a purple giant and starts trashing the city, and then
that was bad.
Korra then turns into a blue giant and starts beating him. And then she wins.
Kind of like what Aang does in the end of in Book 1 of Avatar when he turns into that giant fish thing, but not nearly as stupid.
Yeah, but the thing is, the thing is though, it's the fact that there are 2 sort of like embodiments. One is the embodiment of evil and chaos, which is Vaatu, I believe his name is, and then there was the embodiment of good, which was Ratha. Ratha is the one responsible for the Avatar existing in the first place. And then she's seemingly killed during the final battle, but of course they sort of explained that one cannot exist without the other. It's that kind of thing. Good cannot exist without evil. Light cannot exist without darkness. So it's like Ratha can't actually be dead. So it's like, okay, but then how are we going to beat Vaatu? Well, we kill him. But you just said that one can't exist without the other. Yeah, but we've destroyed him now, so he's gone. Okay, fine.
Very easily sorted out.
The writers plot bended.
They used the power of writing bends.
And somebody might point out to me, they're sort of like, oh, she didn't destroy Vasu. And it's like, well, it would have been nice if they made that a bit more clearer, because he sure seemed dead as shit to me.
It most probably is that he's like, a piece of him is still alive. Like, you can never truly destroy him. But again, as you said, they actually need to say he's still around.
But the thing is, though, like, in the episodes detailing One, it was shown that Ratha had him, like, basically under control for millennia. Then One kind of fucked things up, and Vaatu escaped. And then they sealed him away in a tree in the spirit world. But they didn't seal him away this time around in Korra. He just evaporated. I didn't see any sealing.
He's gone down below the earth to regain his strength over the centuries.
Maybe he'll be back in the next series of Avatar after Korra, I don't know.
Might be. Who knows?
But yeah, so the plot was kind of like I wouldn't even say hit and miss. It was a miss. It was a clear miss.
It was missed for about 90% of the series for that one.
Yeah. Though, to be fair, it's not to say it wasn't completely horrible. There was some entertaining stuff going around thanks to Varric. Varric was essentially an eccentric businessman who helped Asami out because, like, her dad was an equalist in the previous season and ultimately had to go to prison. So her company was kind of like failing. Varric agrees to sort of help her out. And he was completely insane and off the wall and balmy, and it was amazing because he was so likeable.
It was a breath of fresh air.
Sadly, it turned out he was evil because he was dragging out the civil war between the water nations just so he can make money. But he never sort of like slipped into generic villainy. He was all still quite entertaining in it all.
He basically is a normal businessman in that case.
I suppose so. But yeah, he had a lot. He provided a lot of entertainment because he also created movers. It's funny because they're movies, but they called them wrong.
I see what they did there.
But what was quite interesting was the fact that he was making films to like support the civil war with the Water Tribe, and they were basically done as like old propaganda films. They were black and white. Had the villain Unalaq be painted as this mustache twirling villain who was like, "I'm going to use my doomsday device to destroy the world." And then you had Bolin playing the hero, going "not so fast," and these like cute and cuddly animal sidekicks. Those parts of the show were genuinely entertaining. It was kind of hard not to like them.
Thankfully, Bolin was part of that, so it makes him infinitely more likable than Marco.
Yeah, but to be fair, they didn't go too far with Bolin. Because with Bolin, they kind of played him out as if he was getting a lot more arrogant. But I feel like they didn't go far with it enough. But I suppose now's a good time, on the subject of Marco, let's bring up what a little shit he was in that show.
Oh my god, that bloody character.
Marco
is a dick, essentially.
He's a massive knob. Let's go down the ways. Okay, point number one. At some point in the early in the show, Bolin sort of gets together with one of Korra's cousins, who's a very much sort of blank, emotionless, quote unquote emo girl.
Basically, she's my 2.0 without the likability.
Yeah, she's mate. But to be fair, Eska and Desna, who are Korra's cousins, they were a bit bland. They were just sort of like there, but I don't know. I still kind of appreciate them being there anyway.
Yeah.
But Bolin gets together with Eska, who's one of Korra's cousins, and then regrets it because he sort of realizes that he can't get out of this relationship. So he goes to Marco. How do I get out of this? And Marco uses the line, breaking up. I'm probably paraphrasing. I don't know the exact line, but it basically goes, breaking up with a girl is like putting off a leech. He just referred to Asami, his ex-girlfriend, as a leech. Fuck you, Marco.
Not even just Asami. All women. Breaking up with a woman is like putting off a leech. Wow.
Especially considering the fact that Asami did nothing to warrant the breakup.
No.
Marco literally just dropped her for Korra.
Not only that, it's like Asami was really decent, really likeable, didn't hold a grudge either, and also was really nice to Korra, and is like one of Korra's close friends.
She could also kick ass, and she wasn't a bender.
Yeah, she created an electric glove.
She has an electric glove as a weapon. To be fair, I don't think she even needs that to kick your ass.
No.
But yeah, Marco pretty much just like... And to be fair though, I'm willing to give that a bit of... Because like, I'm willing to let that be a sort of like... Not Marco taking a personal jab at Asami, like some people did. I'm not willing to see it as that. That's not to say that everything else Marco did was great. No. Because like because then like some point before the midway point of the show, Korra and Marco break up.
What a shock!
Because Marco is like devoted to his job as being a policeman, so he reported on Korra to the president or whatever of Republic City. Korra gets pissy at him for doing his fucking job. That's the kind of thing. On some cases, I can sort of not sympathise with Marco, but I can defend him from Korra because Korra's being a bitch. But at the same time, Marco was being an utter twat. So when they broke up, I'm literally staring at my screen going, I actually don't give a shit that you two are breaking up.
Finally!
I
finally broke up! Oh my god, you know what could have made it worse though?
What?
It could have been worse if he then tried to go back with Asami.
That would be pretty bad if they did that, if he like tried to get back with Asami after broke up with Korra. Oh fucking wait! He did!
Oh yeah!
Not a day after Korra broke up with him and stormed off, him and Asami are making out. To be fair, I think Asami technically made the first move, but still, it's like
understandable on her front.
But the fact that Asami's willing to sort of take him back is like quite surprising. But
girl, then, you are too good for him.
But then the show's sort of like, Marco and Asami are probably going to get back together, and it's like, oh Christ!
No, Asami, you're too good a character.
But if, at least then the writers didn't do some bullshit with like Korra coming back and treating it as if nothing had ever happened and her kissing Marco right in front of Asami. Oh fucking wait! Because Like I said before, Korra lost her memory briefly, but then got it back. But then, it turns out that the one thing she didn't remember was that her and Marco broke up. And so...
What are the odds?
So when she comes back to Republic City, she kisses Marco, and Marco's like, are you okay? And Korra's like, so explains all the stuff that's been going on, and she says, oh, I lost my memory, and like things are a little bit hate. And Marco says, well, don't you remember that we had a fight? And Korra's like, kinda, but it's a little bit hazy, I don't fully remember it. Did anything go wrong? Marco quickly glances over at Sami, looks back at Korra and goes, no, everything's fine. You spineless cowards! You broke up with her!
How dare you be called Marco?
Yeah, Marco is, by the way, named after the voice actor for General Iroh, the best character in the entire show.
Oh my god, yes.
Counting both Last Airbender and Korra, Iroh is the best character. And Iroh was the best character. And he was voiced by Marco, who sadly passed away sometime during Last Airbender's run. So Marco in Korra is named after him. But still, despite that, the fact that Marco was too much of a coward to say to Korra, no, we broke up, and the look Asami gives him, Asami should have just gone over there and kicked him in the balls.
No. You know what she should have done? Gone over to him, put on the electric glove, grab him by the balls, and then shock them.
Yeah, it was such a cowardly douchebag move for him to do. And any little sympathy I might have had for him as a character just sort of left.
Oh, they left me when he made the leech comment, but that was like, oh, you dick.
Fortunately, Book 2 ends with Korra going to Marco and saying, by the way, I now remember the breakup. I don't think this is going to work. And they just say, it's never going to work between us. Let's just part ways as friends. And I genuinely started pumping my fists in the air, going, yes! Finally! Thank you, God!
I'm going to go with bowling.
I've never hated a relationship in a show before. I mean, usually when two characters... when
you haven't watched Game of Thrones, then?
No, but what I mean is like whenever I watch something or play a game or read a book or something and characters like get together, I don't do that thing where I'm sort of like, oh no, he should get together with this other character or whatever, and I'm not like, oh, I wanted this to happen. Well, sometimes it is because if a relationship's been building up, like with Aang and Katara, it was like so obvious from the start that Aang had a thing for Katara, and as it got closer and closer, I was like, for God's sake, why can't these two just get together? But that's when it was handled well. But I've never found myself... there are some relationships that I'm sort of just adamant to. I'm sort of like, oh, they're together now. Okay, I've got no issue with it. But the Korra Marco one is the only one that I genuinely disliked. And I was so surprised by my hatred of it.
It's understandable, considering how both characters, especially during Book 2, were just really unlikable.
If there was any kind of spark between Korra and Marco, if they just had like moments where we could see a relationship building between them, I would have been so much more forgiving, but there wasn't.
There was no chemistry at all.
There wasn't. Korra literally just fancied him, he literally fancied her. That was it. That's all they needed. Which again, I think is a result of the short running time. Because Book 2 of Korra, despite the fact Book 1 was like renewed for three seasons, Book 2 still was only like maybe 15 episodes long.
Yeah, it was still shorter.
It was still really short, and I think Book 3 is kind of going to be the same. So yeah, that kind of suffers. Book 2, all in all. In fact, no, actually, can I go back? I said before that the only entertaining moments were bowling sort of bits with the movers of the propaganda films.
Yes.
There was one other moment that we completely forgot. Tenzin and his family in Book 2 was so much more interesting and likable because Tenzin...
And they were already interesting and likable, so that's a whole new thing.
You see, Tenzin, as I said before, Tenzin is Aang's son. You see, Aang and Katara had two other kids beforehand. They had that other son, Bumi, who's not a bender, who became like a commander in the army, and their daughter, Kaya, who's a waterbender. And then they decide to go like on... Tenzin and his like wife and children are going on a trip around the air temples. Bumi and Kaya decide to go with him just to spend some family time. It becomes quite apparent that there's quite a bit of a hostility between the three of them because they accuse Tenzin of being Aang's favourite because he was the airbender and they weren't. Tenzin and Kaya call Bumi out for being so reckless and hot-headed just because he's not a bender and sort of trying to make up for it. Tenzin has a go at Kaya for like traveling the world and not like doing anything with her life. It's just so interesting because these are like, they felt like actual people. I think that's what somebody said, that they felt like actual people having an actual argument.
It felt natural. It felt like something like this would happen if after someone, you're the child of someone so famous and so powerful, and then you're there's three of you, and you all have very different lives. Yeah, it's very different, and it is something that will cause friction and tension. And they did that so well.
And it's kind of implied that maybe Aang wasn't all that great of a dad. Like, maybe he did kind of like, maybe not intentionally, but he in some way did sort of like not give Bumi and Kaya as much attention. That being said, though, there was one of my favourite scenes, I think, in the show is when Bumi goes to see like a statue of Aang and just starts talking to it, and it's like it's quite a heartfelt moment, because even though Tenzin, Bumi, and Kaya do argue, at no point is there like a massive falling out and they just stop talking. They
all love each other.
They function like a family.
You have fights, but you make up at the end of it.
And that's what made it so interesting, especially like towards the end when they go into the spirit world to look for one of Tenzin's daughters, and like it's at that point where Tenzin sort of finally comes to terms with being the son of Avatar Aang, as he sort of like admits that he will never be Aang, and then Aang appears before him and says, "No, you won't be me because you're you," and it's such a great moment. See, we can talk good about Book 2.
Oh yeah, I still think Aang was a good dad to all three of them. I just think that, one, he died very early on, so he wasn't able to raise them all very well. Anyway, I think it was
plus he was probably very busy.
Yeah,
he's the Avatar,
and also it's because he may have. I don't think he favoured Tenzin the most, but he probably trained him the most because Tenzin is the Airbender, so he would have to teach
the next
him.
Airbender.
So he'd have to train him.
It probably was like that.
But it didn't mean he didn't love his two other kids. He loved them.
Oh God, no! I don't
think he loved them very much.
Oh, definitely. It's just a shame that he passed away so young. I say so young.
Bloody writers!
He was in his 40s, but the thing is, though, Aang had to be dead, otherwise we couldn't have Korra.
Well, that's a shame, isn't it?
Yeah, saying that, it's almost like saying, like, oh, if Aang was here, then we wouldn't have Korra. That might have been a bit of a plus, wouldn't it? Because Korra's and I think Korra makes some dumb decisions as the Avatar, but I think possibly like the one that I probably question the most is her decision at the end of Book 2. You see, as I said before, Book 2 is all about spirits coming into the human world and basically posing a threat because they've been corrupted by the chaos of Vaatu. And it's like, everything's going out of control. And in the episodes detailing the Avatar's origins, back with 1, it was when the humans and the spirits lived together in the same world. There was so much hostility between them. Humans didn't like spirits, spirits didn't like humans. One sort of realised they can't live in peace. No matter what I do, I can't get them to listen. So he decided to have the spirits just stay in the spirit world and just keep everything separate. And then, of course, Unalaq, the villain's plans, is not just to merge with Vaatu and become the Dark Avatar, and to bring the spirits and the human world together to bring about a reign of chaos. And then, after he's been beaten, Korra sort of like says, what if one was wrong? What if we should have, maybe the humans and spirits should live together? And I'm sitting there going, no, they shouldn't. I know you're trying to bring about a sense of equality here and like trying to make people sort of learn that they have to live with this.
One's not the villain here. He was trying to sort things out.
History has proven that this is a terrible idea. You're just going to cause conflict. And of course, though, that's what she does. She decides to leave the spirit portals open so that spirits can live in the human world. And while Book 3 hasn't gone into that too much so far, we'll get into Book 3 in a bit, it's beginning to seem like that was a bad move on Korra's part, at least from my point of view.
Loads of vines. Loads and loads of vines.
Loads of vines. Yeah, it was a moment where it sort of made me I think I probably figured it out much earlier, but it just made me realise that Korra is not a good Avatar, at least not at this point.
No.
Because, I mean, Aang you could sort of forgive because he was 12. He was still a little kid. He was still learning. But even then, as 12, he was still quite wise in many respects. And he was all about peace and understanding and bringing people together.
He had a very good set of ideals, especially the fact is he refused to kill anyone.
Which was a big point, because everyone was saying to him, you have to kill the Fire Lords. And Aang said, no, I refuse, there has to be another way. And there was. Mm-hmm. And while I have got nothing against Korra being action first, questions later, it doesn't really complement well with being the Avatar in a sense. I'm sure there is a way for her to be like that and still be a good Avatar. But
she needs a better set of ideals and also stop being a child.
Yeah, she does still have those kind of moments where she's sort of like just... She's the kind of person where if she disagrees with something, she will make it quite blatant that she disagrees with you. She is not one to keep her feelings in check or to keep herself to herself.
No, she does not. She doesn't keep her mouth shut. She is one that shouts it out loud.
Yeah. I suppose I'm beginning to run out of steam talking about book 2.
Should we go into book 3?
I think first we should talk about the video game that was announced earlier this week, which came as a real shock to me, actually. For those of you not aware, well, you are now, a Legend of Korra video game has been confirmed.
See, this does all fit into our show.
When I first read it, I kind of rolled my eyes because video games based on licensed properties usually don't turn out that well. Look at every movie licensed game ever, except for Spider-Man 2.
Not ever. I would say, actually, I would say PS2 and below, movie games were at the very least decent. After that, it went downhill like hell.
I've heard that a lot of the old Disney games, like the SNES and the Sega Genesis, were really good.
Yeah. Lion King and Aladdin were very good, apparently.
Licensed games that are based on licensed properties tend to not be all that well because they have like much smaller development times or costs or whatever.
Yeah.
So at first, and there have been Avatar: Last Airbender games that have come out before. They all look terrible. I have no interest on trying any of them. But the thing about the Legend of Korra game, at first I did roll my eyes until I found out that Platinum Games was working on it.
For those who don't know, Platinum Games are most known for making the Bayonetta series.
Also, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance and The Wonderful 101, which are 2 games I've played.
And also Mad World on the Wii.
And Mad World. They've got a reputation for making very good games. And usually, like, in the cases of Metal Gear Rising and Bayonetta, quick, fast-paced action games with a lot of insane stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
So, to find out that they're working on a Legend of Korra game piques my interest much more. Activision is publishing it, but according to, like, the article that I've got here, the people who work on the show didn't approach Activision. They approached Platinum first.
That's good.
So that kind of makes me feel like, oh, thank God.
Going straight to developers and asking them, especially one like Platinum who know what they're doing, I'm confident in this. There is one thing that I found very interesting, though.
What's that?
They have already said how long the game is going to take to play through. It says they will take 4 to 6 hours to complete.
Yes.
But it will also contain a new game plus of sorts, as well as mini games and such.
Also, it's a download-only title. It's not going to be for retail purchase.
Which means they must really be a lot cheaper, which is good.
Yeah, I suppose I'm willing to forgive the length since it's a download-only title. It makes a bit of sense. A lot of download titles are quite short and for quite low money.
Yeah,
so
as long as
it'll probably be quite cheap.
Yeah, I was about to say, as long as they keep it cheap for the 4 to 6 hours, that'll be a decent price, and I'll be fine with that.
Yeah, the game, I should probably state actually real quick, the game will be available for 360, PS3, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. And it will be a download title only. I've got the list of things here. It will be set between the events of Book 2 and 3. So sometime after... So I think it makes sense since Book 3's only just started. Would it make sense to have it take place after Book 3?
Spoilers!
I haven't got much hopes for the plot, because the game starts off with Korra having lost her ability to bend. Again.
Amon!
I read that and I was like, really? She's lost her bending again. In fact, the announcement trailer for the game is it's set in the spirit world. It's animated like in the start of the show. It has Korra fight. It's just like Korra fighting off spirits, and then her being overwhelmed and she screams and it cuts and then there's the title for the game and it's like, your trailer for your video game is showing the protagonist getting her ass kicked. That's not a ringing endorsement.
Unless you're a masochist, in which case you probably enjoy it.
Yeah. But still, even though like the story will no doubt be, I haven't got high hopes for the story, like I said. But the games.
To be fair, Platinum's games is you don't play them for the storyline; you play them for the gameplay.
I don't know. I enjoyed that. I mean, the only ones that I've played are Wonderful 101 and Metal Gear Rising. I'm planning on playing Bayonetta 1 and 2 when they come out on the Wii U.
I'd say Metal Gear Rising's plot was okay, but compared to the rest of the Metal Gear Solid series, it was very out there, is the best way to describe it.
Really? It was too out there for the rest of the Metal Gear Solid
yes,
series.
I am going that far and saying that the rest of the Metal Gear Solid series is actually going, okay, that's a bit too far-fetched for our liking.
So apparently people can take the vampires seriously, but not the cyborg samurais.
It's not actually a vampire, but there we go.
Anyway, back to Legend of Korra. Seeing I'm just looking here. 4 different fighting styles that each play a role on the battlefield, considering the fact that you will have access to all 4 forms of bending, which is quite interesting. You know,
because we lose all our powers except one, I hope we actually get to pick what one we want to start with.
I'm afraid you don't. You start off with water bending, which to be fair makes sense since Korra is a natural water bender.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah, and it will probably work in the same manner. You'll then unlock Earth next, then fire, and then finally air. It says here that it's basically a lot of stuff here about how the combat works, like hitting block at just the right moment will enable Korra to reverse an attack, leveling up. The square and triangle buttons on the PlayStation version, at least, are used for different attacks, with each strike in a combination capable of an additional charge for extra damage. There'll be like other abilities that you can purchase from like an in-game shop or something.
There we go.
All the original voice actors will be back, obviously. Can't have a Korra show about the voice actors.
Even though we'd like to miss some of them, Marco.
To be fair, I've got nothing against Marco's voice actor. I've got a lot against his character. There's a difference.
True.
Apparently, Platinum have actually studied martial arts references in order to best showcase how the fighting works, which is pretty much how the creators of the show deal with it. So that's good to know.
Yeah. And
also, this actually kind of caught my interest is the fact that it will include a pro bending mode using actual rules from the show. In Legend of Korra introduced a sort of like sport called pro bending, which is basically like 3 benders, 1 water bender, 1 earth bender, and 1 fire bender, I believe, on a team. I think it's firebender. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, I think it is.
And it's all about scoring points and taking out the opponents. So the fact that that's an extra side thing you can do is kind of interesting.
You also get to play with the polar bear dog. That is what it is. It's a polar bear dog.
I know it is a polar bear dog, but yeah.
Yes, but for those who have not seen the show, there is a polar bear dog. There is also a sky bison.
Animals in the Avatar universe are essentially 2 animals just put together.
They're basically chimeras from Fullmetal Alchemist, except
less terrifying.
True.
So you got like platypus bears, lion turtles,
platypus bunny.
Eel swan's a new one from Book 3, apparently.
Oh god! Speaking of, can I just quickly say something about Book 3 and Fullmetal Alchemist? One of the voice actors from Fullmetal Alchemist, I swear, is in Book 3 of Avatar of Legend of Korra.
Which one?
Yuki.
Oh, which one's Yuki?
You know that the one who's I'll get my revenge on the 2 Elwick brothers.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah, I swear he plays the spirit, the hedgehog spirit thing that Korra talks to, and he starts talking. I'm like, Yuki.
That's kind of
not Yuki, Yogi. That's it, Yogi.
It was Yogi. But yeah, that's kind of weird.
Yeah, I just sitting there going, what?
Voice actors, ladies and gentlemen.
They're everywhere.
I only found out earlier today that Greg Sipes, who probably most well known for voicing Beast Boy in the Teen Titans cartoon, voices a character in episode 3 of Book 3 of Korra. But just kind of weird, but whatever.
Although saying that there's a lot more celebrity voice actors in Legend of Korra than the other ones.
Yeah, because the main cast of Korra are voiced by people that, for me personally, I've never heard of before. Kind of the same with the main
some
cast
some of them are recognised, like J.K. Simmons, who plays Tenzin.
Oh yeah, J.K. Simmons as Tenzin. J.K. Simmons, by the way, he played J. Jonah Jameson in the live-action Spider-Man movies, didn't he?
No one can replace him as J. Jonah. I'm sorry, but...
That's why he's not in the Spider-Man reboots, because they were like, we can't have anyone else play him. We can't get back J.K. Simmons.
Oh, yes, they can. They can. But will they, is the answer.
Going back to the Korra video game, actually, real quick, the version I've been talking about is like for 360, PC, PS3, PS4, Xbox One. There is apparently a 3DS version in the works. It's not going to be the same game. Apparently, it's developed by Webfoot Technologies, who I don't recognise, which already is setting off alarm bells in my head.
Oh no!
But what is interesting is that it's going to be a turn-based strategy game. So,
all right.
At least it's not. At least it's going to be something else and not just like a watered-down version of the console game.
Oh my god! Fire Emblem meets Legend of Korra. That'd be awesome.
That would be awesome, but I think we need Shin Megami Tensei X Fire Emblem to come out first before we think of that.
Good point.
So that's the game. So I guess now we can move on to.
I have a question. Do you think that because this has come out at a very interesting time, because there's also another video game being based on a TV property, well, more an anime property. There is an Attack on Titan video game in the works for the 3DS.
Isn't that just a port of the one that's been online for a good couple of years now?
No, it's a different one. That's
Oh, okay.
That was made by a completely different person. This is like a proper 3DS title coming out.
Okay.
And I think it's coming out localized in the fall. Do you think this is a like a little battle between the two, or do you think?
I very much doubt it. I don't, because Korra might have like be animated quite similarly to an anime, but it is ultimately a Western show. Attack on Titan is very much a Japanese show. Also, Korra is aimed at like even though we're two people in our 20s talking about the show. It's still aired on Nickelodeon, the same channel that shows off SpongeBob SquarePants. Legend of Korra is... I'm not saying it's completely aimed at the kids, but it is...
It's more aimed for a children's
It's still
audience.
a show for the kids. Attack on Titan, do not show that shit to kids.
Oh my god. Show it to your kids and enjoy it.
No, don't show it to your kids. I'm 20
Tough
years
love,
old and I found that
people,
terrifying.
Tough love. It's called tough love. They'll get over it.
It's not called tough love, it's called being cruel. But
tough love.
But in answer to your question, no, I don't think this is a battle between Korra and Attack of Titan. Because let's be honest, Attack on Titan would win, just in terms of popularity.
Good point, Ned. And also, some of the characters are better than Legend of Korra. Let's be honest.
But I suppose now we should move on to really what started off the reason for this podcast in the first place. Book 3 started yesterday/today with 3 episodes, and I can safely say that it's actually pretty good. Yeah. I'm liking it. I'm liking where it's going.
It's already made a solid start compared to Series 2, which is Book 2, which is a boss.
Yeah. You know, Book 2, when that started, I was just left with just hating everyone.
Bad taste in the mouth.
Yes, I was left with a very foul taste in my mouth. But here with Book 3, we've now got something going. There's still a little bit of stupidity behind it all. I suppose I'll probably explain. What Book 3's plot is at the moment is that because of the events of the end of Book 2, some random people are suddenly developing airbending. Like, people with no bending techniques whatsoever suddenly can airbend. And this, of course, is big news for Tenzin, because now it means that there are more airbenders out there.
We're not extinct anymore, guys.
Well, endangered, technically. So the
there's only one family left.
The purpose of this show is that Korra and the gang, the gang being Korra, Marco, Bolin, Asami, Tenzin's daughter Jinora, and Tenzin's brother Bumi, who, by the way, is one of the people who has now developed airbending. Also,
can I just say his first scene with that little spirit thing that he has with him? That was adorable. I don't even care. Just that little...
Bumi is one of the best characters. I'm glad he's still in it.
Yeah, Bumi was one of the best characters in this series, and also Bumi in the original The Last Airbender was also awesome.
There was a Bumi in The Last Airbender who was one of Aang's childhood friends, who, like, obviously Aang named his son after.
And was just brilliant.
But yeah, and so this group is now going out to find all these airbenders. I don't know where the show is going to go off from here, because now we have not only the end of episode 3 have suddenly gone off like a bit of a dark turn, although I'm sort of like, really? Another conspiracy within Ba Sing Se?
I don't understand, why are the Dai Li still around? Surely, as soon as the guy came back, he's like, yeah, guys, you're out. You're out.
Well, they still need a force. These aren't the
then
same. Then
rename them. Get rid of all of the guys who were originally Dai Li and get a whole new set of people.
At least this time around, it's sort of like this conspiracy is going on, and like the ruler's in on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, and then there's also the fact that there was a prisoner who was kept in a small prison on the top of a huge isolated mountain, who was kept in there by the White Lotus, which is the group that Iroh from The Last Airbender belonged to, who in Legend of Korra, the White Lotus are essentially like an organisation who support the Avatar and pretty much just help out.
They're the good guys.
Yeah, but this prisoner who's been isolated in this one prison is also gained airbending, and the fact that he had no bending before and was considered dangerous enough to be kept in an isolated prison at the top of a lone mountain.
Pretty interesting.
That scares me. So already off to a good start. And then there's the fact he's not operating alone. In episodes 2 and 3, I think, episode 3, he broke out 2 of his helpers. One of which is an earthbender who can turn his earth into magma.
Yeah, it's a magma throwing star.
And he was kept in a wooden ship in the middle of the sea. So it's like, okay, he's clearly dangerous. Then they broke out a female waterbender who has no arms.
And she creates water to make basically tentacles instead of arms.
And
it's horrifying.
And she was so dangerous, she was kept in a cage in a volcano. I don't know if it's a volcano per se, but it's like basically an area that's very, very hot and completely devoid of water. So and now they're going to break out no doubt she'll get broken out in the next episode, a firebender who is so powerful that she can blow things up with her mind.
And
so
what's really sorry.
Well, what I was going to say is the fact that Book 1 of Korra, but the thing is though, the Last Airbender had an overarching villain, which was Ozai. There were a few other villains in between, but Ozai was the overall threat of that series. Not so much with Korra. Book 1 had Amon and his Equalists. In fact, I'm not even going to consider the Equalists as the villains, because Amon was very much the face of them, so he was the villain. And he was interesting and terrifying at first, and then at the end he was sort of like, oh, that was a bit of a waste.
Wasted potential.
Book 2 had Unalaq and Vaatu, who, like, Unalaq was just, I didn't care. He wasn't intimidating.
He was the most uninteresting villain in the entire mythos.
He was a very uninteresting villain. Vaatu was just generic evil god. I don't dislike him, but I don't particularly like him either. And
you bring that character in when you've got nothing good in your series.
Yeah. And now we've got, not like an organisation or a single guy, 4 people who are so dangerous they had to be kept in separate prisons and be sort of monitored for years. And the fact that Zuko, of all people, is shitting himself. Yes, Zuko is back in Book 3, and I squealed with delight when I saw him.
Also, I found out who's doing the voice for him. It's the guy who plays... You know the X-Men movies?
Yeah.
The guy who plays Senator Kelly in those. It's him.
Oh.
And he actually does a really good voice for Zuko. I'm impressed.
Yeah, no. I think it's a good voice for Zuko. Obviously, they couldn't bring Dante Basco back.
As much as we wish.
Dante Basco originally voiced Zuko, and even though he's like in his 20s or something, he's got this.
He's older than that. He's in his 40s.
Oh, he's in his 40s. He's older than that. He's in his 40s.
It's because he's got a very young sounding voice.
He's got a very young sounding voice. He can pull off like a 16-year-old boy very easily. So obviously they couldn't bring him back to voice an 80-year-old man.
Oh, I wonder if Azula's alive as well.
We'll see. I was for a while. I sort of thought that maybe the 4th prisoner was Azula, but that theory's been shot. And I think Azula doesn't need to come back. I
would like her to come back, but yeah. One thing though about the 4th prisoner, Zuko outright states that he hired someone with her ability years ago, and it's the guy.
I love that line so much. Funnily enough, I hired someone with the exact same ability to kill the Avatar. It didn't work.
That was brilliant.
It was amazing.
I'm getting the feeling that she's gonna look like him.
What, a bit like Combustion Man?
Yes.
Gonna have the eye and everything?
Yes, I'm staking it that it is.
It'd be kind of interesting, but I don't think like she'll have the eye tattoo or anything. I feel like maybe she just has a similar power and is not related to him in any way whatsoever. And that'd be kind of a weak.
She's the long lost daughter of Combustion Man.
No, I was gonna. If that turned out to be the case, and that's like she was like, and Combustion Man was like her grandfather or something, and she wants revenge against the Avatar for killing him, that would be such a weak motivation, especially considering how Aang didn't kill him. He kind of blew himself up.
He just knocked a rock in his eye, but in his third eye, and he just blew up.
Yeah,
one of the few times a character actually dies on screen in the series.
But yeah, book 3 is off to a very strong start because we got very interesting and terrifying villains. Hopefully, they won't go the same way as Amon.
Oh please no! I'd love it if Amon came back. He didn't die when he exploded. He just got badly burnt.
Maybe he's with Shao in the spirit world.
Oh my god, if Shao comes through the spirit world to come back and hold the Avatar.
No,
come on.
No, it won't happen, and plus he's too far gone. He could barely make a coherent sentence. Or he was repeating the same things over and over again.
True.
He wasn't even like that big of a villain to begin with in book 1. He was very much a sort of like, okay, we need somebody before Azula. Let's just get this guy. Okay. But also, Korra's doing a good job of not pissing me off. She's still very hot-headed and like getting angry when she really shouldn't be.
She's gotten more likeable this series, which is good.
There was a point in like episode 1 where I think she sort of, I heard it, is basically Korra admitting that she'd done goof for the last 2 seasons, and is like now genuinely trying to make up for it. Of course, the thing I mentioned earlier about how letting the spirits come back into the human world was a bad move. Clearly, I'm not the only one thinking that. A lot of the characters in Republic City are not all that pleased that random vines are popping up all over and coming into their windows.
She has an 8% popularity.
I don't know whether to find that funny or to hate that idea that the Avatar has like polls, but whatever.
It's something that probably would be a factor in real life, which is kind of hilarious.
I suppose it probably would.
Can I say there is something that was stupid but was also kind of hilarious? You know when they go into all the different towns to find the airbenders and they keep getting turned away, and it cuts to this little thing of the airship and their little faces keeping on going to different places?
Yeah, and the faces get gradually more and more downcast.
That was just... It was stupid, but it was just so...
I liked this because I just liked it because of Tenzin's attempts to like convince people...
You get a free bison!
You get a free bison as your best friend!
You get to shave your hair off!
Like me! I really thought I had that last one. Who doesn't want a sky bison for a best friend? Oh. But that's actually something that really interested me. The fact that all these people are suddenly developing airbending powers. Some of them don't take it too well. One guy climbed up onto a bridge
and tried to commit suicide.
But he kind of slipped. But yeah, some of them aren't taking it all that well. Then they found like a farmer guy who was like, he even said like, I don't consider myself an airbender, I still consider myself a farmer who just happens to be able to airbend. And of course Tenzin's like, well, now you can join the air nomads and be able to help become a proper airbender. And the guy's like, no, I don't want to be an airbender, I just want to keep living my life. And of course
I want to stay with my family.
It kind of surprised me, but at the same time I was like, actually this is kind of an interesting conflict. These people have developed airbending powers. Tenzin wants to rebuild like the airbending as a whole. But the thing is, though, none of these people want to be airbenders. They didn't ask for it. And I was
they don't want to be nomads. They want to live their life still.
And there's an interesting conflict that I'm looking forward to seeing like continue to play out. So far, they've picked up one new airbender who I don't like at all. They've picked up like the young thief character, Kai, I believe his name is.
Yeah, it's Kai.
Yeah, and he quickly established himself as like someone I do not like in the slightest. Because he's always.
Is it just me though? Or I know it's not the same voice actor. I checked. It's not the same voice actor, but he sounds like Aang, and he looks like Aang as well.
It doesn't look like Aang to me, but I think it's because of the type of voice. It's sort of like high, sort of not high pitched, lispy kind of voice. But yeah, Kai didn't warm up to me. He sort of warmed up to me a little bit when we first saw him, because I was sort of like, okay, we're going to have this character along, and he sort of says like, oh, I'm an orphan, my parents are dead, blah blah blah, and I was like, at first I thought it was going to be like he was going to use the airbending practices as a means of revenge. Then it turned out he's just a thief, and like the police show up and are like, this boy got adopted like 6 months ago and then stole all their money, and I was like, wow, fuck you, kids. And Mark, they decided to bring him along anyway, because they returned the money, but the Team Avatar decided to bring him along anyway because they still need airbenders, and this might be a chance to help him sort of turn around his like lifestyle. Of course, Marco then says to him like, I'm watching you, and I was like, you damn well better be. It was the one time where I actually agreed with Marco. I was like, yes.
Yeah, you're not doing goof today.
Speaking of Marco, nowhere near as hateable as he was in the beginning of book 2, although he's going for this really awkward bit where he's now really formal with Korra. And it's like, dude, you broke up. Act like an adult and move on.
It is, I think, all the characters that were dislikable in the last series are becoming more likable now. I think the writing's gotten better on that front.
And also, like, you know, going back to the Marco thing, it really bothers me considering how neither Korra or Asami hold no ill will towards him. And in fact, Korra and Asami seem to be developing a lot more on their relationship now. Like
which I like.
The sad thing is though, somebody like I saw like a jokey tweet about like Korra x Asami. In case you don't know, they're basically saying that some people like to ship Korra and Asami. Shipping is basically putting two characters together romantically. So a lot of people are like some people seem to be like wanting Korra and Asami to get together. And that's the thing though, normally when people like make these stupid relationships, I'll just roll my eyes and ignore it. But they were having a conversation in the scene, and I was looking at them and going, actually, it could work.
Yeah. If Nickelodeon got balls, it might actually work.
Nickelodeon is still like a kid show. And I'm not saying that kid shows can't have gay relationships, but the thing is that we're still at that point where they
wouldn't do it.
Yeah, some parents would be like, "Oh, I don't want my kids knowing about gay relationships." And it's like,
we need someone like HBO, because HBO are very, very, very forward, and they're able to go out on a limb.
Yeah, but yes. I'd totally be up for Korra and Asami hooking together. I mean, Korra's voice actress, Jeanette Varney, did state in an interview that she finds Asami very attractive.
Like, brilliant.
And I think somebody took that audio and lip-synced it to Korra, so it's even... But,
perfect.
There was a bit of a moment where, like, is it the mayor or the president of Republic City? I can't remember.
I think it's the president.
Yeah, the president of Republic City, pretty much at the end of episode 1, or it's either episode 1 or 2, pretty much tells Korra to fuck off because he's had enough of her shit.
Yeah, he basically orders her out.
Yeah, he banishes her from the city, and I was on one hand, I didn't know, the thing is, I was in like one or two things, I didn't know whether to be like, hey, fuck you, man, Korra's awesome, she's just trying to help, or if I was meant to be like, yeah, Korra, you did done goof, he's kind of got a point. But ultimately, the one that came through was sort of like, I don't care, I don't want to get out of this city because I'm sick of it.
We've been here for too damn long.
Yeah, the city has took up all of book 1 and most of book 2. So the fact that we're back at Ba Sing Se, which is kind of interesting. By the way, did the lower rings of Ba Sing Se look that bad in Last Airbender?
No, they did not. It's gone to shit.
Because I don't remember it being that impoverished.
No, it used to be decent all round, and it just suddenly we come back to it, it's like, oh, the lower ring is full of slums and just really bad.
Although not that surprising, considering how it's quite clear that the Earth Queen is clearly corrupt.
Yeah, really bad.
As soon as I like, there was a trailer before, like a week or so before book 3 aired. There was a trailer. There was no voices. It was just like scenes that were being shown out of context. And one of them is just like one shot of the Earth Queen sitting on her throne. One look at her, and I was like, she's going to be evil, isn't she? And that's exactly the case. Now
she's going to be... You know the guy who was the commander of the Dai Li in Last Airbender? I think she's going to be like that type of villain. Not a major antagonist, but a more minor one, but still important.
Yeah, that'll probably be what will happen.
Because the four prisoners are going to be the main antagonists.
Yeah, although what is, even though like the Queen herself, I'm sort of like rolling my eyes that she is a baddie in the end. The fact that, because it's then like when Korra turns up saying like, oh, we've heard reports that there are airbenders in your city, and the Queen's like, no, we haven't got any airbenders here.
Oh no, no airbenders here, none at all.
And then Marco and Bolin, who like got separated from the rest of the group and got in fact, Marco and Bolin get reunited with their family, which is like
this was a really good scene.
That was a good scene. For those, probably explain. Marco and Bolin in book 1, it's established that they lived on the streets for a very long time because their parents were killed. So they've had it a bit rough. They haven't
Turns
really had
out their dad came from Ba Sing Se.
Yeah, and when they got there, they happened to run into their uncle, and eventually got introduced to this whole family. And like these scenes where they're with their family genuinely touched me. I was like, oh.
You know what's worrying me though?
What?
One thing that's worrying me though is when they mention about the Queen,
and
the grandmother goes, "Don't talk about her like that." It's like, oh no, they're gonna set up a argument, aren't they?
Well, I think that's probable. But the thing is, though, I think I'm probably being optimistic here, but I think like only the grandma. I think the grandma's the only one of the family that seems to like actually still support the Earth Queen, because nobody else sort of stood up for her. No. And like their cousin, who's voiced by Greg Sipes, as I mentioned earlier, was sort of like against the whole idea. So I don't think Marco and Bonnie are going to get kicked out of the family entirely and be all like, oh, then the Korra will be like, oh, don't worry guys, you're still our family. And they'll be like, oh. I think the scene where Marco and Bolin like see a picture of their parents, and like Marco gives their grandma the scarf that he wears, which is from his dad. That was like really got me.
That was a touching moment. It was actually
I think
really nice character development.
I think that's the first time in the entirety of Korra, counting books 1, 2, and 3, where I genuinely felt touched
by Marco of all people.
Yeah. So yeah, I suppose in summary, because book 3 is ongoing, it's not finished. So I don't know. Maybe it could all go horribly wrong.
We're only 3 episodes in, guys.
It could all go horribly wrong, and everything will just fall
just
apart.
like book 1.
I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful.
I'm hopeful. It's going in the right direction.
It is. Book 3's had a strong start. It's going in the right direction.
I think it's got a stronger start than book 1. Book 1 had a strong start, but I think this one has a stronger one.
I think book 1 sort of fell a bit too early. This one's like we're 3 episodes in, and like stuff's happening. It feels like well paced.
Yeah, they're not holding back. They are going for it, and it's
because of the fact that books 1 and 2 only had like 13 or 15 episodes to run through. It meant that a lot of stuff needed to happen. There wasn't rarely ever a moment for the characters to sort of there was never a moment for the audience to just take a breath and absorb the information.
Unlike Last Airbender.
Yeah. Because Last Airbender had a lot of moments where the audience could sort of just relax and sort of absorb the information they had been given, and then the next episode would be, okay, back to the action.
Mm-hmm. Or just entire episodes that were just comedy episodes that worked really well.
Tales of Ba Sing Se. I mean, I know it's not a completely comedy episode.
No!
It was very much filler. It was filler done right, because it was very entertaining.
It was the right type of filler episode.
It was entertaining. Gave a bit of character development in terms of relationships. Gave us insight into other characters,
and was depressing as fuck.
And also helped set up the next episode. But I suppose in conclusion, because I feel like that's really all we can talk about without repeating ourselves or getting to the nitty gritty. But I feel like we've perfectly summed up our feelings on Korra as a whole. Book 1, decent at first, but kind of went down a bit. Book 2, shit for 90% of it, and only really got good midway through before going to shit again. Book 3, strong start. Great characters are all likable. Great villains so far. We've seen they're set to be great, hopefully, and a lot of good potential considering the nature of the Airbenders. Zuko coming back.
And that's the key thing here. There's potential. Are they going to use it? That's what we need to think about.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm worried about, that are they going to fall short? And I hope they don't. I really hope they don't.
So far, my only sore spot with the show thus far is the character of Kai. Because he needs to go a long way to make me like him. Because so far he's just like... I mean, he's portrayed as being the sort of like, oh, that lovable scamp stealing people's money. Oh, it's like...
Aladdin 2.0. Well,
the thing is, though, Disney's Aladdin, you know, he stole a loaf of bread to survive and then gave that bread away to starving children. It's like...
There is another thing.
What?
The build-up, because at the end of episode 3, the build-up of not just money that the Earth Queen is stealing, it's also the fact that there's a very big thing with the airbenders that are arriving.
Yeah, she's
building an army of them.
She's building an army of airbenders, which is interesting.
It sounds like the plan is that they're going to attack the city.
Yeah, because the Earth Queen is clearly hostile towards the Avatar, given how Aang and Zuko took a lot of the Earth Kingdom's land, apparently.
They took a bit of it that was like, this is linked to the comic books, and they haven't established this too well, which is a problem.
Yeah, I remember in one of the comic books, there was a bit where the Earth King kind of got a bit, like, antsy about the fight with the Fire Nation, and there was the risk of another war starting.
Yeah. But it actually looks like, unlike it's not going to be the Fire Kingdom that's going to be the villains of this war, it's going to be the Earth Kingdom, which is an interesting change.
Well, so far we've had Firebender villains and Waterbender villains, and of course now these four new ones, we're going to have one of each element set up. That's the other thing I found about because obviously the leader of the group, I forget his name, but the leader of the group I find quite interesting.
Zahir, I think his name is.
He marks him as the first airbender villain. Because think about it, the air nomads are all very peaceful and tranquil, so it's like none of them have ever shown any signs of ever being hostile towards anyone. You couldn't imagine an airbender turning to the dark side, if you will. But here we have someone who hasn't had that discipline or that life, gaining airbending powers. It makes him quite terrifying. What could he do with it?
Rally all the other airbenders that don't want to become like the nomads, and crap!
But that would make no sense. It's like
that'd be too obvious.
Become an airbender and a nomad. No, and then this guy become an airbender and a terrorist. Okay, that wouldn't make any sense.
He won't say a terrorist. We will make a new kingdom of airbenders.
But again, that also wouldn't make any sense because these people don't want to be airbenders at all. They just have airbending powers, but they don't want to use them.
Power corrupts. But yeah, I hope there's a better reasoning than that. But
yeah, hopefully their evil plan should become apparent quite soon because it's quite clear they have something against both the White Lotus and the Avatar. And Zuko even says the Avatar is in danger. So
yeah, how is she going? Because she couldn't beat Amon in a fair fight. How the hell is she going to beat these four?
Well, hopefully she'll have gotten better.
Even so, there's 4 of them fighting at the same time. These 4 are extremely powerful. They're gonna...
Well, I doubt she'll be fighting them alone. No doubt the rest of the gang will be able to help her. That was one of my biggest problems with book 2, actually. The rest of the characters didn't feel like they were contributing much in terms of the way of action.
They were the cheerleaders.
Marco and Bodin were able to hold off Esker and Desna for a while, and Unalaq a bit, but then they just quickly got their asses kicked. And it's like, oh... I'd like to see a bit more of that.
Also, we got the creepy water leader twins again.
Oh yeah, Esker and Desna are back in Book 3, which I kind of like. I mean,
they're with Zuko.
I wouldn't have been up in arms if they didn't come back, but I think it's nice that they've been like they've come out as a sort of like that they've been acknowledged and that they're also contributing. Because in a way, it's almost like in a way of them redeeming for helping their father last time.
Yeah, I love it. They also, when Zuko mentions that he hired the Combustion Man to kill the Avatar, she immediately goes, "I order someone to kill her as well for ruining my wedding." It's like we've hired.
I think what makes that scene even better is the fact that she admits to trying to kill Korra while Korra's dad is right in front of her. And he just has this look on his face where it's just like, oh, can we not talk about this? No, not even that. It's just it's not a case of him it's not a case of that. I think it's more of a case of like, can we really not talk about this? I don't really want to hear how you've tried to kill my daughter.
Or her ancestor in Zuko's case. Also, Zuko's got a dragon.
Zuko has a motherfucking dragon. That might not sound like a big deal, but in The Last Airbender, the dragons were driven to extinction. There was like maybe
Near
2
extinction,
left.
yeah. So it's nice to see there's another one left.
And the fact that Zuko has one, like,
the dragons only trust certain people.
Which makes sense, actually, because if you remember, his ancestor was Avatar Roku, who had a dragon.
And was also, another Fire Lord was voiced by Ron Perlman. For like, it was hilarious because it was like only for like 2 or 3 lines. It was like, oh, hi Ron Perlman. Oh, bye Ron Perlman.
It's always great when big name voice actors suddenly appear in a cartoon for like 1 episode. It's like, whoa, what?
Come back! There was also James Hong in there at one point.
Who's voice?
He was one of the air nomads, one of the ones that was like trying to push for Aang to become the Avatar, or to know about the Avatar.
Oh, okay.
That was brilliant because I'm like, ha! It's David Lopan. If you haven't watched Big Trouble in Little China, you need to watch that movie.
But,
have you watched it, Michael?
I've not watched Big Trouble in Little China.
You need to watch it. It's glorious. It's glorious. It's John Carpenter again. I think he did that not long after The Thing, and it was also with Kurt Russell. And it's like when you go from The Thing to Big Trouble in Little China, it's hilarious.
I imagine it is, but Legend of Korra, hey!
hey! Big Trouble in Little China's got martial arts in it, so not completely off topic.
It linked back to Korra. We're not going off topic.
And it's got James Wong, who's also in Legend of Korra, so Last Airbender. So hey, we're not off topic today, guys.
But I suppose, like, I don't know about you, James, but I feel like I've talked about all I can about Korra.
I think we've talked enough about it. I think it's. Shall we call it here?
I think we'll call it here. In summation, Legend of Korra. Again, book 1 decent and got a bit bad towards the end. Book 2, most of it was terrible aside from a few bits. Book 3 started off very strong. Looking forward to the video game, but still a bit wary. So I think we can safely say that Korra will hopefully be on the rise and that it won't crash and burn.
Like the other 2 books.
Because, let's not forget, Last Airbender only had 3 books. Legend of Korra is going to have this one and a 4th one. So even when book 3 ends, it won't be the end.
I hope the villains from this one also appear in book 4. I think that's one of the weaknesses that Legend of Korra has. As we said, Ozai was the major overarching villain of the 3 books of Last Airbender. This one has no overarching villain, and I think that's what it needs at this point.
I personally don't have a problem with it having like a villain depending on like the different books. The problem is the fact that the villains thus far have been very weak.
Or started off strong but became weak.
Yeah,
like
in Amon's
Amon.
Case. Yeah.
But was still awesome because he was voiced by Steve Bloom. I'm sorry, if you're voiced by Steve Bloom, it automatically means you're awesome. So it's the same with Crispin Freeman.
And other voice actors that we could mention, but they're just wasting time.
Yes.
So, I say we call it here. So in summation, Legend of Korra is getting good. I think it's getting good anyway.
Fingers crossed, people. Fingers crossed.
Hopefully I won't have to make like a follow-up video in like a few months of me apologising for how wrong I was.
I am so sorry. Legend of Korra was shit.
I don't want to do that. Me like waking up like in a few months' time and watching like the final episode of book 3 and going, I was wrong. It got worse.
Well, when it comes to the end of book 3, we'll come back and we'll say what we thought of the end of it.
Personally, I think book 2 was the lowest it got.
It can't get any worse.
I genuinely don't think it could get any worse than book 2 did.
The writing's got better. The writing has got a lot better in this one, which is good. So fingers are crossed.
Fingers are crossed. But I suppose that's it for today. So
yep,
James, you want to sign?
Ladies and gentlemen, I shall sign us out, good sir. And today, that is it. That is it for today. And, well, actually, this evening, we're all finished. I'm time-stamping it. That means automatically this is going to be aged and dated. Oh, dear.
No!
Oh, dear. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it. Goodbye.
Bye, all.
Bye.